Have you ever wondered what happens if you stop explaining yourself for 21 days? No replies, no arguments, no defenses, just silence. The world thinks silence is weakness. But what if I told you it's the most powerful weapon you'll ever hold? Because in 21 days of silence, you don't lose your voice. You find it. You don't shrink, you rise. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will change the way you see silence forever. And before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this lesson is one that nobody talks about, but everybody needs. Imagine this, waking up one morning and choosing silence. Not just the silence of turning off your phone for an hour, not just the silence of avoiding an argument, but a deliberate, intentional silence that stretches over 21 days. A silence that is not an absence of sound, but a presence of power. This is the kind of silence that doesn't just change how you speak, it changes who you are. Because when you stop explaining yourself to the world, when you stop reacting to every noise and every distraction, you discover something that most people never dare to touch, the depth of your own voice within. The truth is, we live in a society that glorifies noise. If you're not posting, if you're not responding, if you're not constantly visible, you're forgotten. We're taught that silence is weakness, that silence is submission, that silence means you have nothing to offer. But here's the secret. Silence is the sharpest weapon you will ever hold. In 21 days of silence, you won't just hear yourself, you will meet yourself. You will come face to face with the raw, unpolished version of who you are, your fears, your desires, your doubts, your brilliance. And that encounter is the beginning of transformation. The first few days of silence will be the hardest because your mind is addicted to chaos. It will itch to check the phone. It will crave validation from others. It will beg you to break the stillness with words. And when you resist that urge, when you sit with the discomfort, you will start peeling away the layers of conditioning that have been placed upon you since birth. You'll realize how often you've spoken just to fill the air, how often you've explained yourself to people who never really cared, how often you've wasted energy defending yourself to those who never deserved a single explanation. By the 7th day, something changes. Your silence no longer feels heavy. It starts to feel like freedom. You begin to notice things that you missed before, the rhythm of your own breathing, the way your thoughts spiral, the way your intuition whispers to you when the world isn't drowning it out. Silence reveals the difference between impulse and intention. It slows you down just enough to recognize when you're about to repeat an old mistake. It teaches you patience, and with patience comes control, the kind of control that makes you unshakable in front of others. And then comes the magic. By the 10th day, you start to see your relationships differently. The people who once demanded constant attention, the people who thrived on your reactions, begin to feel your absence. They notice the gap that your silence creates, and suddenly you are no longer predictable. You are no longer easy to manipulate. You are no longer the person who gives away power through endless explanations and arguments. Your silence forces them to reflect on their own actions. Some will miss you, some will misunderstand you, and some will finally respect you, because silence commands respect in a way that words never can. But the real transformation doesn't happen with others, it happens inside you. Around the 15th day, silence begins to show you the strength you forgot you had. You realize that not every battle is worth fighting. Not every opinion deserves an answer. Not every insult requires a defense. Silence teaches you that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Because silence doesn't mean you don't know what to say. It means you've mastered the art of not giving your energy to the wrong places. 21 days of silence isn't about muting your voice forever. It's about sharpening it. It's about stripping away the unnecessary noise until what remains is crystal clear. When you do speak again, your words carry weight. People listen differently. They lean in. Because silence teaches you that when you finally break it, your voice has the force of conviction, the strength of authenticity, the magnetism of truth. You no longer speak just to be heard. You speak to be remembered. There's also a surprising beauty in silence. It reconnects you with your dreams. In the noise of everyday life, your ambitions get buried under the expectations of others. But when you're silent, when you step away from the constant chatter, you rediscover what you truly want. You hear the voice that says, This is who you are meant to be. You feel the pull of your own destiny more clearly. And with that clarity comes courage. The courage to say no to what doesn't serve you. The courage to let go of people who drain you. The courage to build a life that is yours, not one designed to impress others. Think about it. What is 21 days compared to the rest of your life? 21 days of silence may feel like a small sacrifice, but it has the power to reset everything. It strips away the superficial and forces you to confront what's real. And once you've tasted the power of silence, you'll never go back to being the person who constantly needs to prove themselves. You'll carry that strength into every room, every conversation, every challenge. The world doesn't talk about silence because it's uncomfortable. People are afraid of what they'll find in the quiet. They're afraid of confronting themselves. But those who dare, those who embrace the discipline of silence become unstoppable. Because when you master silence, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, there is nothing left in this world that can defeat you. Now picture this, day 21. You wake up and realize you've gone 3 full weeks without needing validation, without chasing approval, without explaining yourself unnecessarily. You've walked through discomfort, faced your inner chaos, and come out stronger. You've learned that your power doesn't come from the noise you make, but from the stillness you hold. And when you finally decide to break that silence, your voice will not just be heard. It will echo. It will leave an imprint. It will carry the strength of every quiet moment you endured. That is the transformation nobody talks about. The transformation that doesn't come from shouting louder, but from choosing to say nothing at all until your silence itself becomes the loudest message you could ever send. That is the transformation nobody talks about. The transformation that doesn't come from shouting louder, but from choosing to say nothing at all until your silence itself becomes the loudest message you could ever send. But silence isn't just a practice of self-discipline. It's a mirror. It reflects back the parts of you that you've been running away from. When you strip away the noise, the excuses, the constant input from everyone else, you are left with yourself. And that is where the real work begins. Silence asks questions you've never dared to answer. Who are you without the validation of others? Who are you when nobody is watching? Who are you when the only voice in the room is your own? And in those 21 days, you cannot escape those questions. You must face them. And in facing them, you become someone new. Most people don't realize that their lives are dictated not by their own desires, but by the expectations and judgments of others. From childhood, we are programmed to seek approval. Every action is measured against someone else's reaction. But silence breaks that cycle. In silence, there is no applause and no criticism. There is no one clapping for you, but there is also no one doubting you. It's just you, and for the first time, you're free. Free to define yourself on your own terms, without the weight of everyone else's opinions pressing down on your shoulders. The beauty of silence is that it doesn't lie. Words can be twisted, manipulated, misunderstood, but silence is pure. It's direct. It says everything without saying a thing. When you learn to sit in silence, you learn to sit in truth. And the truth, no matter how uncomfortable at first, is liberating. You start to see through the illusions you've built around yourself, the roles you've played to fit in, the masks you've worn to be accepted, the walls you've constructed to protect yourself from pain. Silence breaks those walls, piece by piece, until you are standing bare, but unafraid. It is in this stillness that creativity begins to flourish. When you are not distracted by the constant noise of the outside world, your inner world expands. Ideas that were buried deep within you begin to surface. Dreams you had long forgotten come back alive. You begin to write, to paint, to design, to create in ways you never imagined, because silence creates space for imagination to breathe. And in that space, you discover that the answers you've been searching for outside have been waiting within you all along. What many fail to understand is that silence is not about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about reconnecting with it at a deeper level. When you're silent, you notice the details that once slipped past you. But the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the quiet strength in someone's eyes, the beauty in ordinary moments. You begin to feel life more fully. You begin to live in the present rather than rushing through it. And this presence, this ability to be fully alive in each moment becomes your superpower. As you journey through those 21 days, you will also start to notice the shifts in your energy. The restlessness that once consumed you begins to fade. The need to explain yourself, to justify every decision, to prove your worth, diminishes, and what replaces it is peace. A peace that is not dependent on circumstances, not shaken by other people's behavior, not lost in the chaos of daily life. A peace that stays with you even when the world outside is loud and messy. This inner calm is what gives you strength to face challenges without breaking, to stand tall when everything else is crumbling, to respond with grace when others expect you to explode. And then something extraordinary happens. You start to attract a different kind of energy. When you master silence, people sense it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. They feel your strength, your clarity, your composure. They notice that you don't waste words, that you don't chase approval, that you don't get dragged into meaningless drama. And suddenly they treat you differently. Some admire you, some envy you, some fear you, but everyone respects you. Because silence makes you mysterious. Silence makes you powerful. Silence makes you unforgettable. It's important to understand that silence does not mean isolation. You can be silent in a crowded room. You can be silent while still engaging with life. Because silence isn't about shutting the world out. It's about not letting the world control you. It's about choosing when to speak and when not to. Choosing where to give your energy and where to withhold it. It is about knowing that your presence itself speaks volumes. That you don't always need words to leave an impact. By the time you complete 21 days, you will realize how much unnecessary weight you've been carrying. The arguments you thought you needed to win, the people you thought you needed to impress, the explanations you thought you owed, none of them matter. You realize that your worth is not determined by how loudly you speak, but by how strongly you stand in silence. You realize that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your emotions, your energy. And that realization is freedom. Imagine walking into a room after 21 days of silence. You don't announce yourself. You don't try to prove anything. But people notice you. They feel the shift in your energy. They lean in when you finally decide to speak because they know your words carry weight. And in that moment, you realize something profound, that silence has given you back your power. The power to choose, the power to influence, the power to shape your own destiny. The journey doesn't end at 21 days. The truth is, once you've tasted the power of silence, it becomes a part of you. You carry it into every interaction, every decision, every challenge. You no longer feel the need to rush into answers. You no longer feel the need to defend yourself at every turn. You no longer feel the need to be understood by everyone. Silence teaches you to be comfortable with being misunderstood because you know your truth is not up for debate. And with that, your entire life shifts. You stop wasting energy on things that drain you. You stop entertaining people who don't respect you. You stop engaging in battles that don't matter. Instead, you invest your energy where it truly counts. Your growth, your dreams, your inner peace. Silence becomes the filter through which you separate the meaningful from the meaningless. It becomes the foundation of your strength, the compass that guides your actions, the shield that protects your peace. The transformation of 21 days of silence is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not for show. It's quiet, subtle, and deeply personal. But make no mistake, it's powerful. Because it creates a shift that no one else can see but everyone can feel. It gives you a confidence that doesn't need to be shouted from rooftops, a strength that doesn't need validation, a clarity that cuts through confusion. And once you have that, you carry it with you for life. So when you walk through those 21 days, remember this. You are not just practicing silence, you are sculpting yourself into someone unshakable. Someone who knows when to speak and when not to. Someone who doesn't just react, but responds with intention. Someone whose presence alone speaks louder than words ever could. And that is the transformation nobody talks about, but everyone feels when they encounter it. So when you walk through those 21 days, remember this. You are not just practicing silence. You are sculpting yourself into someone unshakable, someone who knows when to speak and when not to, someone who doesn't just react but responds with intention, someone whose presence alone speaks louder than words ever could. And that is the transformation nobody talks about, but everyone feels when they encounter it. And here is where the journey deepens. Silence, once embraced, becomes more than just a discipline. It becomes a form of language. A language that doesn't rely on words, but on energy, on presence, on the unspoken strength that radiates from you when you've mastered restraint. You'll realize that silence communicates more than you ever imagined. It says, I'm in control. It says, I don't owe anyone my energy. It says, my value is not tied to how often I speak. And this silent language is far more powerful than any argument because it cannot be twisted, it cannot be manipulated, and it cannot be ignored. Think of how many times in life we've been misunderstood, not because our words were weak, but because the people listening were never really listening. Silence removes that problem. When you choose silence, you choose not to waste yourself on ears that cannot hear and hearts that cannot feel. You save your energy for what truly matters, and in doing so, you rise above the noise of petty disputes, meaningless opinions, and shallow validation. And when you rise above the noise, you see life from a higher perspective. You see how small most of your worries really are. You see how much time you've wasted explaining yourself to people who were never invested in your growth. Silence gives you that elevation, that perspective that cuts through the illusions of everyday life. But it doesn't stop there. Silence sharpens your intuition. It heightens your awareness. When you no longer fill every moment with chatter, with distractions, with endless scrolling and reacting, you begin to hear the whispers of your own intuition. That inner compass that has always been guiding you, but that you were too busy to hear, becomes louder, clearer, more certain. You begin to notice patterns, signals, and instincts that were once drowned out by noise. And with that clarity, you make better decisions. Decisions that align with your truth. Decisions that move you closer to your destiny. Decisions that are rooted not in fear or approval, but in wisdom. And here's something most people never realize. Silence also teaches resilience. Because in silence, you have no one to lean on. No constant feedback, no constant validation, no constant reassurance. It's just you and the voice inside your head. And facing that voice, learning to strengthen it, learning to soothe it, learning to trust it. That is how resilience is born. When you no longer fear your own company, when you no longer fear your own you become unstoppable. Because the world can take away many things from you, but if it cannot shake the fortress of peace you've built inside, it cannot defeat you. As the days pass, silence also reveals the truth about your relationships. It's an unmasking. You will see who truly values you for who you are and who only values you for what you give them. Because when you stop feeding others with constant attention, when you stop being available at every call, when you stop explaining yourself at every turn, you'll notice who fades away and who stays. And though it may hurt at first, this revelation is a gift. Because silence cleanses your life of those who were only holding you back, those who only loved the version of you that served their needs. What remains after this cleansing is real, genuine connections, people who don't need constant words to feel close to you, people who understand your silence without fear, without judgment. Those are the people worth keeping. Day by day, silence also rewires your relationship with time. You begin to realize how much of your life you've spent on the trivial, arguments that led nowhere, conversations that drained you, hours wasted trying to convince people who were never meant to understand you. In silence, you reclaim that time. You learn to use it on yourself, on your growth, on your dreams. And suddenly, you see time not as something slipping away, but as something you are investing moment by moment in the person you are becoming. And then there's the power shift. You will notice that silence makes people uncomfortable because most people expect noise. They expect reactions. They expect you to justify, defend, explain. And when you don't, when you simply remain silent, they are forced to confront themselves. They are forced to fill the space with their own thoughts, their own guilt, their own truth. And that is why silence is powerful. It shifts the burden back onto others. It makes them accountable for their actions without you lifting a finger. As the 20th day approaches, you will notice something remarkable. The silence that once felt heavy now feels natural. It no longer feels like effort. It feels like freedom. You begin to prefer it. You begin to protect it. Because you realize that silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is where your strength grows. It is where your confidence is born. It is where your soul finally feels heard. And once you feel that, once you taste the richness of your own inner world, you will never again be satisfied with shallow noise. When day 21 arrives, you don't simply complete a practice, you complete a transformation. You are not the same person who began this journey. Your mind is sharper, your heart is calmer, your presence is stronger. And when you do finally choose to speak, your words cut through the air with weight and intention. Because you have learned that your voice is not something to be wasted. It is something to be treasured. You've learned that silence has taught you more than words ever could. And you've learned that the world doesn't need you to be louder. It needs you to be clearer, more intentional, more rooted in truth. But perhaps the greatest gift of all is this. Silence gives you back to yourself. It strips away the expectations, the noise, the chaos, and returns you to the essence of who you are. It reminds you that you are whole without validation, powerful without noise, worthy without explanation. It teaches you that your strength is not in how much you say, but in how much peace you carry within. And when you walk forward from those 21 days, you carry that lesson into every room, every challenge, every dream. You carry it in the way you stand, the way you move, the way you choose when to speak and when to stay silent. And everyone who meets you will feel it, even if they cannot explain it. Because silence changes you in ways words never could. And that transformation becomes the quiet power that stays with you for the rest of your life. And when you walk forward from those 21 days, you carry that lesson into every room, every challenge, every dream. You carry it in the way you stand, the way you move, the way you choose when to speak and when to stay silent. And everyone who meets you will feel it, even if they cannot explain it. Because silence changes you in ways words never could. And that transformation becomes the quiet power that stays with you for the rest of your life. But what happens next is even more profound. You begin to realize that silence is not just a practice for 21 days. It is a mindset that reshapes the way you live. The transformation does not end when the calendar does. You see, silence rewires your relationship with yourself. And once that happens, there is no going back. You carry this awareness into your daily life, into your conversations, into your decisions, into the way you react to the world. Suddenly you are no longer the same. You are different, more grounded, more deliberate. And people can sense it. They may not understand what changed in you, but they know you've stepped into a new level of strength. You will notice how much unnecessary talking happens around you. People complain, argue, gossip, explain, defend, all out of habit. But you, having mastered silence, will no longer feel the urge to join in. Instead, you will listen. You will observe. You will watch people reveal who they are without you saying a single word. You will see how words can be used as weapons, as masks, as distractions. And because you've learned to be still, you will no longer get caught up in it. You will no longer waste yourself on noise. Instead, you'll use silence as your filter, separating what deserves your attention from what does not. This shift changes this. A way you carry yourself. When you are no longer desperate to fill silence with words, you develop an aura of calm authority. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to explain yourself constantly. You don't need to seek approval. Your very presence becomes enough. And this is the secret that few understand. True influence doesn't come from how loudly you speak, but from how deeply your silence is felt. And then there's the control it gives you over your emotions. Before, you may have been quick to anger, quick to defend, quick to react. But silence slows you down. It teaches you that not every emotion needs an immediate expression. Not every thought needs to be voiced. Not every reaction needs to be given. In silence, you learn to master the pause. And within that pause lies wisdom. Within that pause lies the power to choose a response rather than to be controlled by impulse. This single shift can change the entire trajectory of your life, because the ability to pause before reacting is the foundation of emotional strength. Imagine being in an argument and choosing silence over shouting. Imagine being in a conflict and letting your silence disarm the other person. Imagine being criticized and not feeling the need to defend yourself. That is real power. Not the power that comes from intimidation, but the power that comes from self-mastery. Because the moment you realize that silence cannot be argued with, cannot be twisted, cannot be broken, you begin to see it as your greatest shield. Over time, silence becomes a sanctuary, a place you return to when the world feels overwhelming, a place that restores you, heals you, strengthens you. Because silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is where you reconnect with your soul, where you hear your own wisdom, where you realign with your purpose. And the more you return to this sanctuary, the more resilient you become. Life's storms no longer shake you the way they once did. You may bend, but you do not break. Because your strength does not come from the external, it comes from within. And perhaps one of the greatest revelations of this journey is that silence is not passive, it is active, it is a choice. Every time you choose silence, you are choosing discipline over chaos, clarity over confusion, strength over weakness. You are making a conscious decision not to give your energy away carelessly. And that conscious choice builds character. It builds resilience. It builds a kind of inner wealth that no one can take away from you. Think of the people throughout history who changed the world with their presence. They were not always the loudest in the room, but they carried a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that commanded attention, a silence that came from knowing exactly who they were and not needing to prove it. That is the kind of silence you build in 21 days, and that is the kind of silence you carry with you forever. The longer you practice it, the more you realize that silence is not about the absence of sound. It is about the presence of power. It is about knowing that you don't have to rush into words to prove your worth. You don't have to over-explain to gain respect. You don't have to argue to show strength. You can stand tall in your silence, and the world will eventually adjust to your frequency. This transformation also redefines success for you. Before, you may have believed that success was about